And we begin with breaking news, a political bombshell.
Former President Donald Trump has been indicted on federal charges tied to classified documents. This is the first federal indictment ever against a former president.
Here's what we know at this moment. 7 counts have been filed against Trump. This is related to the boxes of classified documents that federal agents discovered at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. The Justice Department is not confirming the specific charges, but they reportedly include making false statements and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Now, Trump says he is expected to report to federal court in Miami next Tuesday afternoon.
Trump has issued a statement tonight declaring his innocence and referring to the situation as the, quote, boxes hoax. He says, quote, I never thought it possible that such a thing could happen to a former president. This is indeed a dark day for the United States of America. We are a country in serious and rapid decline.
This is arguably the most serious legal threat the former president has faced.
We are joined by Professor Stephen Caliendo from the North Central College. First question for you. 7 counts reported against the former president in the documents case. How serious might these charges be?
These could be very serious. Of course, the indictment's sealed. We have heard nothing directly from the special prosecutor. What we're hearing is from reporting and, of course, former President Trump directly speaking through his own social media site. We'll probably have the information that we need in the next couple of days. But there's at least 2 broad categories here that matter. It's taking the documents that were classified and knowing that they were still classified when he took them and that when he was perhaps showing them to people. And then secondly, of an obstruction. And so some of the reporting that we've had is that the grand jury was hearing testimony from folks at Mar-a-Lago where there may have been instructions given to move documents before the FBI came. And so there may be, you know, in addition to having the documents, trying to obstruct justice as well.
Right. Professor, the former president recently said if indicted, it might actually help him in his bid to recapture the White House. In your opinion, how will the indictment shape the campaign?
Oh my goodness, how many hours do we have to talk about this? This is going to be, I mean, because there's a couple elements to it. One is that in the court of public opinion, there's no question that he has a solid base, maybe 35, maybe up to 37% of folks who really believe his narrative of this, which is they're out to get him. It's the deep state. It's all a conspiracy. It's a witch hunt, and those folks will be there. I think what the former president is counting on is a wider belief that there's something nefarious happening, and I don't know that he's right about that. I don't know that people will buy into it. But the other part of the question that's important to think about is, what about the logistics? We're expecting, remember, he's been indicted already in the New York case, the documents case, right? And that's probably going to go to trial early in the spring. When is this one going to go to trial? It can't be before it. We can't imagine that they would be ready for a federal trial at that point. And it can't be right after it because he's entitled to time to prepare his own defense. So he's going to be campaigning. He's going to be running for the nomination at that point. We move this later into the summer. He may have secured the nomination by the time this trial happens. And don't forget, we're still waiting on what's happening in the Georgia case, which could come down soon as well.
Really interesting. All right, some historical perspective here. We've never had anything like this before, but what close have we had?
I don't know. It's not, I mean, you can't help but think about Richard Nixon, and this is a very different thing, of course, because he was a sitting president at the time. When we talked about President Trump's impeachments, we talked about the Nixon case, and that was much closer. But in terms of obstructing justice, in terms of potential criminal activity, the actions are maybe a little bit closer to what was going on with Nixon. But it's so different because not only is he not sitting in the White House now, he wasn't sitting in the White House when this alleged crime took place, and he's trying to get back into the White House in the midst of all this legal trouble. So there's absolutely nothing that comes close to it.
So much to talk about, so much to analyze. Professor Stephen Caliendo, thanks so much for your time, and we'll bring you new developments in this historic Trump indictment throughout the hour.
Thank you.
And now another perspective. Political editor Mike Flannery has been covering politics for 50 years. He tells us America has never seen anything like this before.
Dawn, the closest I've ever seen to something like this was the Watergate scandal a half-century ago, breaking just as I was starting out in the news business in the early 1970s. But President Richard Nixon resigned, and then President Gerald Ford pardoned him, sparing Americans the spectacle of a former commander-in-chief on trial for criminal charges. Now, these charges appear to involve only the classified documents that Mr. Trump allegedly refused to turn back over to the federal archives. Still unclear is the status of any investigation into allegations that the former president conspired to block the peaceful transfer of power by seeking to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's victory on January 6, 2021. The only historical precedent for anything like that, of course, was the actual Civil War 160 years ago. Nonetheless, these charges, serious as they are, set the stage for an extraordinary election year in 2024. Emotions are likely to be running high, and Chicagoans will have a front row to some of that as the Democratic National Convention meets here next summer. I'm political editor Mike Flannery.